Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another edition of the Mandatory Live. If you're rocking with the show, thank you so much. But if you haven't already subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, like the video. And remember, you can also follow us on our social media channels. We're at the Mandatory TKO. And you can find us on the audio side as well. So keep that in mind. So if you're on, looking for your podcast, your shows, leave a rate and review because why wouldn't you give us a 5-star? Lots to get into. Keep the comments coming. This is an interactive show, as you know, if you joined us before. So we will be getting into all of your comments. We've got a ton to talk about, Bryan. We're going to get into a couple of fights that will be going on this weekend, a couple of big fights. Now, there will be the rematch with Emmanuel Navarrete and Oscar Valdez. We all know how the first one went. I was disappointed in the end. Also, looks like Bryan may not be on right now. Well, he'll hop back on, so don't worry about it, guys. Bryan will be rejoining us as he did right there, and we will also be talking about Richardson Hitchins and Liam Paro, which is a massive fight. We will be breaking that down and giving you our best bets for both of those fights. We are also going to get into the Riyadh season card. Beterbiev and Bivol 2. Stacked card. But before we get into all of that, Bryan, I think we have to quickly touch on Gervonta Tank Davis and Lamont Roach because they had their press conference earlier today. And there was just a ton of news that came out from this press conference. One of them being Gervonta Tank Davis saying he's going to call it quits after 2025. Your thoughts on this?
I've probably said this here before, but I never, ever, ever believe that a boxer is going to retire when they say he's going to retire. Outside of like certain instances that may appear obvious, but when it's somebody who's 30, give or take, and he'll be 31 time of his retirement, like I'm not buying that. I do think there's some truth to what he's saying in terms of like I buy that he wants to just step away and just kind of be low key. It doesn't appear like it. Surprisingly enough, to some people, maybe he doesn't appear like somebody who just wants to be out front and center, kind of like Floyd still tries to be, throughout the second half of his boxing career or life, so to speak, really his life. But I don't know about the retirement stuff. I mean, maybe, but if that's the case, there's some fights that we got to see before he walks away. At least a
Well,
couple.
Tank doesn't fight 3-4 times a year. So if he's saying he's done after 2025, and the reason why I kind of believe it is because some guys they fight way too long, and then we see instances like what we saw with Triple G. Something that you don't want to see. You see something like Deontay Wilder, like you don't want to fight for too long. And if Tank was to say, "Hey, I'm going to retire and do it on my own terms," I would totally get that. And he also talked about going to therapy and how he wouldn't have like the same fire and all of that. So it would kind of change him if he was going to be boxing. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but some interesting stuff from Tank Davis. So yeah, let us know the comments below if you think Tank is going to retire. He is set to fight Lamont Roach. And Bryan, your thoughts on that fight, on Roach getting, a shot to fight Tank?
Look, a Lamont Roach is good, but this is another example of this happened with Hector Luis Garcia, taking a super featherweight champion who's moving up to lightweight and is fighting for a title. And this one's going to be at Barclays Center, so I will do my best to be there covering it. And it'll be nice to have a fight back at Barclays Center. There hasn't been one in a long ass time. The last one, I'm not even sure there's been one since Deontay Wilder versus Robert Helenius, which is now 2 years ago at this point. I'm not sure there's been another one since.
That's crazy. One question before we, remove ourselves from the whole Tank conversation. If Tank was to retire by the end of the year and say Lamont Roach, let's just say
Oh, I
Lamont
forgot.
Roach was
The
oh,
Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia was at Barclays Center earlier
okay.
this year. But
Anyways.
since then,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it.
Anyways, if Tank was to retire, thank you for cutting me off there, Bryan. I know you wanted to get that information out. But
You
if
got to
Tank
be
was to
accurate.
retire, if Tank was to retire and he didn't end up fighting Devin Haney or Lomachenko or Shakur Stevenson or Teofimo Lopez, like whoever, obviously those guys are in different weight classes, but he could fight Loma, he could fight Shakur. What would your thoughts be on his career?
I mean, I'd be disappointed. He's an excellent fighter. It's a testament to how good he's been and how good we think he is that we want to see him fight all these dudes. And here's the thing, like, this is a new generation type of deal. If you look at previous generations, like if you look at, this is gonna sound like some old head shit, but if you look at some of the top pound for pound guys from like the 90s and the 2000s, a lot of them fought, one, each other, two, had losses, but three, like when they retire, there's not a ton of guys that you can be like, oh, they didn't fight this person. Like Roy Jones Jr. beat lackluster, air quotes, competition in his career because the weight class, you know, his weight classes just didn't have anyone who could touch him because he was that good. But like, who are the guys you can be like, Roy Jones Jr. ducked this person or avoided this person or didn't fight this person? There aren't many, barely any, right? Like, if you look at welterweights in the 90s, like with Felix Trinidad, Oscar De La Hoya, Pernell Whitaker, so on and so forth. Like, if you're looking at some of these dudes, Bernard Hopkins later on at middleweight, who was a star obviously in the 90s, but also the 2000s where he really came to prominence after beating Trinidad. Like, these guys fought legit dudes throughout their career. And as they exit the sport, there's not a ton of people who you can say they didn't fight this person. Manny Pacquiao, Miguel Cotto, even Floyd Mayweather, for all the shit he gets. Like, you could parse through, hey, he didn't fight this person at this specific time. You know, like Felix Trinidad fought a later version of Pernell Whitaker, but like they still got in the ring with these people. They're like, we didn't get Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua, and we should have gotten it years ago. Like, there's a lot of fights we're potentially missing out on. And today, this is noteworthy, but he dismissed Shakur Stevenson as somebody who's accomplished nothing in boxing. Where, I mean, like, their resumes aren't, they're not like terribly far apart in terms of quality of opposition, things of that nature. Like, Tank's been in our lives a lot longer, but Shakur Stevenson rose to prominence very quickly. And I think like that's a miss if he doesn't fight Shakur Stevenson. Like, they kind of have to fight each other, I feel like.
Yeah, I just feel like I know how that fight would go. And I think Shakur would be running a lot. Like Shakur would not throw a lot in that fight. And that's exactly what Tank said. Like, a lot came out from this press conference. I think they asked Tank, and I'm paraphrasing, about Shakur Stevenson, and Tank said, well, he hasn't really accomplished anything, and stuff like that. The one thing that I will say about Tank is I'd rather see him fight Loma. And the whole Loma thing wasn't his fault. Loma's the one that backed out of it and said he was going to take some time away. So that's not necessarily on Tank. The one thing that I will say that, regardless if we're talking resumes or not, I think the one thing that Tank has over Shakur is he's actually entertaining to watch. He is a pay-per-view fighter. Like, some people might not agree with that, but he does sell pay-per-view fights. Like, people want to see Tank fight. He's exciting. I don't think Shakur Stevenson has that under his belt at all. So I think that's the difference. And, people will always say, well, Tank never held a full world title. This was one of the comments from IMPK13, one of our friends of the show. I don't think Davis has ever held a full world title. He has had a title before.
Yeah, he had. I mean, I know what he means because technically right now he has like the regular WBA title, but he had like the IBF featherweight or super featherweight. I'm forgetting. But when he beat Jose Pedraza, like, that's a full world title. He's had full world titles. But I mean, yeah, but when we did a version of the Tank resume conversation, and we'll probably like re-up it as we get closer to the actual Lamont Rose fight, which, is now going to be March. So that's 4 months away, actually. But when you do look through it, like, you just want to see a little bit more. I don't think he's fought a bunch of trash fighters. I don't think boxers are trash in general, but like, a lot of people would look at the resume and be like, who did he beat? And then, people who love Tank, and there are a lot of people who love Tank, would say the opposite and be like, look, he beat young lions, so to speak, like Ryan Garcia, like Frank Martin, like Rolly Romero.
Leo Santa Cruz, who was a former champ, obviously moved up in weight to fight him. But to me, like, I've always
also,
yeah.
Like, he's
also
got
Mario Barrios at 140 pounds, which I like Mario Barrios. Some people may not be the biggest fan of his, but
We just named his best 5 wins and plus Jose Pedraza. So those are his
yeah.
best 6 victories. So I mean, you could do with that what you will, but to me, like I want to see somebody else top flight in there. And he and Shakur Stevenson have been kind of doing this dance. It's the new Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence. It's
I
like
mean,
years of this.
I think, people have been doing this dance with Tank for quite some time, but for me, I want to see him against Loma. I think that's far more of a exciting fight than him and Shakur. I don't think him and Shakur is ever going to get made. Nerd, a friend of the show, says Tank won't be mentioned with the all-time greats. And that's up for debate. Like, leave your comments below. And also, if you haven't checked out our little video that we put out about Tank's resume, make sure to go on our channel. We went through his resume and we talked about where we stack him up against other fighters, especially in that division. So make sure to go check that out. But we spent 10 minutes on Tank and we have a lot to talk about,
Yeah.
Bryan.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
let's keep moving forward on this. We will revisit this topic, obviously, when we are going to be talking about Tank and Lamont Roach getting closer to that fight. But make sure to go check out that video when we talk about his resume. All right, Bryan, I think we got to start with Riyadh season because this card is absolutely bananas. And Beterbiev and Bivol, too, is not even the main event. It's the co-main.
Is it?
Yeah, Daniel Dubois
I
and
think it's
Joseph Parker. No, Daniel Dubois and Joseph Parker are actually going to be the main event.
I don't
That's
think
what I
that's
saw.
right. I don't
That's
think
that.
that's right. That's not what I'm looking at. But I mean,
Yeah,
regardless, like that's the best fight on the card. Like I
100%. Yeah.
I like Daniel Dubois, Joseph Parker, but I Artur Beterbiev, Dmitry Bivol too. Is the one for me. It's funny because when you look at the promoters listed for this card, it's basically everybody.
Yeah.
Like it's Top Rank, it's TGB, it's Golden Boy, it's Matchroom, it's Ben Shalom, Frank Warren. Like everybody has a hand in this, so they all made an effort to make this a big card, and obviously they got bankrolled by Y'all Man. So here we go. Like this is a big card. It's going to be in Saudi Arabia. No surprises there, and it should be fun. Like I think it's going to be a good night of boxing, and hopefully the energy in the arena reflects that.
Yeah, why don't you go through the card and list off the names there because we saw this kind of come out like a couple of days ago. There's been some adjustments on who is fighting who. One of those guys, Vergil Ortiz. So why don't we
We'll
run
get
through
to
that
him.
card really quick?
We
Yeah.
have Artur Beterbiev, Dmitry Bivol. That is the main event. That is the rematch for the undisputed light heavyweight championship. We have Daniel Dubois defending his IBF world heavyweight title against Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker, obviously, with a couple of big wins lately, so he's going to get a title shot there. Carlos Adames is now the full WBC middleweight champion. He had the interim for a while. He's going to fight Hamza Shiraz. That's an interesting fight. Vergil Ortiz, Israel Madrimov. That's going to be for an interim title at 154 to WBC. Madrimov, who just fought Terrence Crawford and who's going to fight right before this, like 2 months before this, later this month. So I mean, people will accuse Vergil Ortiz of cherry picking because he's getting somebody on a short rest, but we'll see what happens there. Not an easy fight. Joshua Buatsi, WBO interim title versus at light heavyweight versus Callum Smith. You have Shakur Stevenson versus Floyd Schofield. I think that's going to be higher up on the card, but that's the one for a lot of people is Shakur Stevenson versus Kid Austin, and that's going to be for the WBC lightweight title. And then you have Zhilei Zhang and Ajit Caballel, WBC interim world heavyweight title. I think there may be some additions to this card on a lower tier, like just some prospect stuff. That's possible. It's always possible because we're so far in advance. But we're gonna start seeing like training camp footage and all these different things. I'll say that all 7 of these fights I just mentioned, all of them could probably main event on their own card. So this is something that the UFC tends to do for some of their really big pay-per-views is they stack the deck and put a lot of guys that people care about, people have heard of, whatever the case may be. And to me, like admittedly, like I will watch all the fights, but of the 7, I would say I'm really interested in 4. If I'm being totally honest, I will watch all of them because I'm, boxing like diehard. But I do think like, Joshua Buatsi, Callum Smith is cool, but like that's not one that I'm like dying to see comparatively. Whereas if it were on a main event, then yeah, I'd probably go out of my way to watch that.
Yeah, I think the card is stacked. I think this is a great card. Obviously, there's one that I was looking forward to that didn't end up happening. And that one is Vergil Ortiz and Jaron Boots Ennis. And we got to get into this, Bryan, because there was so much back and forth going on Twitter X, whatever the hell you want to call it at this point. And the rumor was that they were in negotiations. And remember, like, we have to go back to Jaron Ennis fighting Karen Chukazan for the second time. In the post-fight interview, he said he was going to move up to 154 pounds.
Sure.
He said it. And maybe it was a post-fight interview, so maybe, I don't know what was going on, but sometimes I feel like they shouldn't do those, but they do. And he said he was going to move up to 154 pounds. They were going back and forth and negotiating. Like, we don't actually know the full details of what really happened. This is all what is said to have happened, allegedly. And Jaron Boots Ennis and his team then tried to make the fight at 147 pounds when we know that Vergil Ortiz hasn't fought at 147 pounds for quite some time, and that he got really sick the last time trying to get down to 147 pounds. Mm-hmm. So after Boots Ennis said he was going to move up to 154 pounds, he then tried to make the fight with Vergil Ortiz, who has fought his last 3-4 fights at 154 pounds.
Or make him move down. Whatever it is.
Yeah. Make him move down to 147 pounds. Like, Bryan, is that a duck with a capital D, or how would you go about that? What are your thoughts on that?
It'll be framed that way. I want to hear Boots' side, like actual side, not like some shit you put out just refuting it on social media, but like what actually happened there. But and there's another element to this that I want to get to shortly. But yeah, Boots Ennis, it's an interesting time for him because speaking of guys circling each other, we've been talking about Jaron Boots Ennis and Vergil Ortiz, formerly a welterweight, circling each other as like next in this weight class at 147, and knowing that they were probably going to move up. And I think they're both going to be middleweights before too long. Like, we're going to start talking about them being at 160. For the next 3 to 5, within the next 3 to 5 years. So these guys are going to be in each other's lives, and that's another fight that I think we're going to have to see at some point. To me, Jaron Boots Ennis has to come out and clear some stuff up because he looks a little funny here, especially considering that, like, I understand Karen Chukadazan was his mandatory, but I mean, people who may not know any better, for better or worse, will look at his resume and be like, why did he have to beat this dude twice and look better the first time? Where we all kind of were like, could have done a better job of cutting off the ring, of, inflicting your power and pressure fighting so that Chukadazan wasn't so comfortable just using his footwork and, slipping punches and backing away from you the entire time. And then he actually takes rounds off of Boots Ennis in the second fight. I didn't think he was amazing, but like it showed some regression. And with Boots, he's another one where, all right, like it's time now. You've got the wins, you've got the knockout ratio, you've got promotion in your corner, you've got a little bit more of a name now. His best win is it Romain Villa? Like that,
oh my God, it might be Romain Villa. It might be Romain Villa. The one thing that I will say about this whole Jaron Boots Ennis thing is he's been wanting a big fight for like the longest time. This was it.
He's 27.
This was the big fight. This was the big fight. This is what you wanted. Like, didn't you sign with Eddie Hearn? He signed with Matchroom, did he not?
And Vergil Ortiz is with
Golden Boy.
Yeah.
And
zone to zone.
And remember, because there was those contract issues that Jaron Boots Ennis was going through, and like sometimes like the politics, it's not like necessarily the fighter's fault at times when he doesn't get those big fights. Like, we don't really know what goes on in the back rooms when it comes to negotiations.
And no one's honest about it is the key thing. Like when you ask around, motherfuckers just be lying about.
And don't believe everything you see on social media either, because you don't know what's real.
This sport lies more than professional wrestling. Seriously, like I'm not even fucking joking.
Yeah. So in that sense, It's like he wanted the big fight. It's right there for you to fight Vergil Ortiz, and you say you wanted it 147 pounds. I'm not going to say he ducked, but it's disappointing. It's really disappointing on Jaron Boots Ennis, and it makes him look bad, to be honest with you. It does kind of make him seem like a duck. I would never call a boxer a duck, but it's kind of what it looks like at this point. And it seems like what's next for him after this, right? Like, is he going to take a fight at 154 pounds and not fight Vergil Ortiz again? Or, Brian, is it one of those things where maybe we get it later on and we actually get it in the States, which would be better because it's a massive fight.
Yeah.
Like, it's a fight that I think should actually be in the States.
I think a lot of these fights should be in the States. Maybe I'm showing bias. I mean, you could put some in the UK too, but we're trying to get better atmosphere here, not just make fights for the sake of it. Anyway, I would say that, look, if Boots Ennis is perhaps serious, when the IBF tells him, hey, you got to fight Chukadas on the second time, and you do it in your hometown this time, because the first time was actually a co-feature on the card where Tank beats Hector Luis Garcia. Maybe instead of taking that fight, you move up to 154 and test yourself. Like, at that point, he hadn't been a welterweight champion for very long, but welterweight's down right now. And at one point, it looked like welterweight was going to be the money weight class, but Crawford and Spence were just circling each other, not fighting each other, and they were trying to come to terms with it, and that took years. And the weight class was in this holding pattern. We had asked Regis Prograis, one of our first interviews, where we were like, hey, would you move up to 147? He's like, I feel like 140 is just like a better, like more glamorous sort of weight class. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he said. Like, he could make more money at 140. And I think that's true. Like, that's something that we've talked about, regardless. So I think right now with Boots Ennis, like, all right, your next move is going to be very interesting, because you're talking about 2 wins over Karen Chukadazan, who by and large people had not heard of before he got this title shot. Like, we were kind of all. Yeah, like we were kind of.
I didn't even know how to pronounce his name. Like, when I first saw it, I was like, how do you say this name? Like, I had seen him fight before, but I did not know how to pronounce his name.
Yeah, and a lot of people were like just learning about him. He had a loss prior. He beats Romain Villa, who got that upset over Rashidi Ellis, barely won that fight. And I thought Boots looked good in that fight. So it was like, okay, good. That's a good first title defense, interim title defense, but a title defense. Then it's David Avanesian, and I'm like, Terrence Crawford knocked him out like that on BLK Prime. Like, Avanesian's, he's been in the ring with some dudes, but like, that's okay. All right. It's in Philly. Okay, cool. And then this rematch with Chukadazan. So it's like, yeah, we need to see something with Boots Ennis. He's 27. He'll be 28 in June. And at this point, you're 33-0 with 29 knockouts. It's like 33-0, and your best win is probably Romain Villa. Like, okay.
I just want to see him in a big fight, because I think he has all the talent in the world. And I do also think that he's being set up to not only be the king at welterweight, but I also thought that he could be a big face for boxing. So he's still young, like, he's getting up there in age, but I would hope that Jaron Boots Ennis, when he announces his next fight, that it's a big name. Let's get into some comments really quick. We got to go with Al the Pal. Ennis deserves to be on prelims. First fight of the fight card. Also, we'll stick with Al the Pal. Ennis shouldn't even be a main event or co-main event. Put him in the prelims. All right, not feeling
well,
this.
He just fought, so I doubt that's going to happen.
Nerd, Karen is Boots' true nemesis. Well, he fought him twice, Nerd, right? He fought him first. Steven, thank you for joining the show. He said Boots is overrated, and he hasn't fought any ex-champs. I don't believe that's true.
Sergey Lipinets.
Yeah, that's a good...
Which is a good win, but I mean, still
very good win. Lipinets is a very tricky fighter.
Super tough, but like, I mean, point taken though. Like, honestly, like, I mean, he beat Thomas Delorme. I don't know if Thomas Delorme got to a title, but he did fight Terrence Crawford for a title before. He's been in the ring with some dudes also. I mean, but point taken. Like, he had, like, again, best win probably Romain Villa, maybe Sergey Lipinets. Now that I mentioned it, but like, I mean, what are we talking about?
I really like Lipinets, by the way.
Yeah,
like, I think he's a fun fight to watch. Let's go to IMPK.
And Boots kicked his ass, to be fair. Yeah. But I mean, kick more ass. Like,
let's let Boots have one fight at 154 before Ortiz. So he kind of like a warm up.
I agree. But
Sure.
all right,
But it
let's
was
put.
right there for him. Like
Yep.
that's the only thing, right? Like, you've been saying like you're one of the best fighters for a little minute now.
I
You signed
mean,
with Matchroom because obviously business wasn't going the way that you thought it would, and now we're thinking, yo, you're gonna get these big ass fights. It's right there for you.
you
Vergil
know
Ortiz
what?
is right there. Like, this fight could have went down, and you want to have it at 147 pounds, and it's like Vergil hasn't even fought there for a minute. So I would hope when Jaron Boots Ennis announces his next fight, it's a big one, because not only does he deserve it, but like at this point, like we're going to be looking for him to have that big fight.
Let me throw some names at you before we move on to the second part of this conversation. At 154, if I tell you Boots Ennis is going to debut at 154 in the spring, and let's say it's not a direct title fight right away, because and I'll pull up the the weight class, but the title picture kind of a mess right now. But let's name some contenders first. Would you be excited for Boots Ennis versus Charles Conwell?
Yes, I would. I'm a nerd though, so
I would be too, by the way.
I know
I'd,
you would. I
I
know
would
you.
be, and
Charles
I'm
Conwell
not.
is a good fight, dude. Like, if you're okay, I might be the wrong person to ask,
Chat.
because
Go ahead.
yeah, because I do think that Charles Conwell is a good fighter. Like, that would be I think that's a tough fight, Brian.
I don't think that's a gimme for Boots at all.
No.
Here's one that you're going to be excited about, and I think this one would actually be smart for at least Boots. But Boots Ennis versus Tim Tszyu.
Yeah, I love it.
Even after
That's
the last performance, I mean, people would want to see that fight.
yeah.
I think people come away being like, Tim Tszyu would at least push Boots Ennis and try to maybe get something special out of him. Tim Tszyu will be his best opponent that he's had so far.
100%. I think Tim Tszyu needs he needs a
Yeah,
little bit of another fight before he
yeah.
fights someone like Drawn Boots Ennis. So that's the only thing.
Let me give you like one more. Um, the winner of, because they're gonna fight each other, but so on the David Benavidez, David Morrell undercard, and that's gonna be a few weeks before this Riyadh season card. That's gonna be February 1st. But if Boots Ennis fights the winner of Jesus Ramos and Jason Rosario, would you be excited about that?
No. No. Like, what is that? In fact, I'd be bored as shit.
Erickson Lubin.
Don't do that. I like Erickson Lubin. Yo, don't do that to me. I like Erickson Lubin is a tough fight. But no.
Just listen. All I'm saying is, not that I'd bet on Erickson Lubin, but I'd want to look at the odds, just a peek. The champions at 154, WBC Sebastian Fundora, the interim Vergil Ortiz. He'll be defending that on the card that we just discussed. Terrence Crawford has the WBA. Jermell Charlo apparently is still the champion in recess. I mean, okay. Like, I forgot that he was boxing, because the Charlo brothers are famous for their activity. The WBO, excuse me, Sebastian Fundora, and the interim title belongs to Terrence Crawford, because I mean, for whatever reason, Sebastian Fundora has 2 titles, and so does Terrence Crawford.
And there was talk that Fundora was supposed to fight Ennis, but apparently they don't want to make that a title fight for Ennis. Is that correct? Because he's not ranked at 154 pounds.
but he's a champion, so like he should be like, okay, if you're going by rules that we've seen in the past, and we actually like, Teofimo Lopez technically has a window to do this for the WBO at welterweight, but like, if he moves up at 154 and he's the IBF welterweight champion, maybe he can move up and challenge the IBF 154-pound champion, who just beat Tim Tszyu, Bakram Murtaza. I always struggle with this name. Murtazaliev, who just beat Tim Tszyu. Like, okay, if that's the fight for Boots Ennis, sure. I'd like to see that, because he destroyed Tim Tszyu in a fucking devastating way. And I'm not so sure like he's somebody that, I mean, Boots is going to just walk over. I don't give a shit how talented he is. That's a tough ass fight.
No, I agree with you. Let's get to some comments really quick. We got our friend Steven. Thanks for letting us know there. He said, Lipinets was a champ. Won a vacant belt against
That's
a
what I thought,
no-namer,
yeah.
then lost against Mikey Garcia. Steven, thank you for clearing that up for us.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Al the Pal. Ortiz biggest check he could have got, and credit. Yeah, like that would have been a massive fight for both of them. The Saudi money was there.
I
Like
don't
they
think
were
I don't think that fight is dead though. They're both
no.
very
Yeah.
young and like I think this fight could happen even next year. But I mean, Boots is gonna have to play ball a little bit because after if Vergil Ortiz wins this next fight, like I can't say Boots is the A side in a fight with Vergil Ortiz. If Vergil Ortiz wins that next fight, because
Not at 154 pounds. You know what's kind of
yeah,
interesting is like Jerron Boots Ennis was calling out Bud at 154 pounds. He pretty much said no to fighting Vergil at 154 pounds. So I think listen,
allegedly,
and we saw, yeah, allegedly.
yeah, yeah.
But we saw, and like listen, we don't know the full story, but that's just what it seems like, right? But we saw Terrence Bud Crawford fight at 154 pounds and he fought Madrimov.
hmm
And now
And some people didn't
Ortiz.
think he looked great. So
Yeah, I mean, listen, he still won the fight and he
yeah,
won a lot of those rounds. I think I gave him 8 rounds in that fight.
something like that. Yeah, and
But
Vergil Ortiz really struggled his last fight.
yeah, but you know what? That's what I like about Vergil Ortiz because he's not perfect, but he's so fun to watch. The work rate's going to be there, and he made adjustments and he got it done. The one thing I will say though, Bud beat Madrimov. If Vergil beats Madrimov, I think Vergil is in a better seat to fight Bud than Jerron Boots Ennis is.
Which is what he's going after, which is why transition. He did not decide to fight Xander Zayas on this card.
Yes.
So Xander Zayas, who we've talked about extensively on this show, not just because I'm Puerto Rican, but because he's one of the best prospects in the sport and is trying to go from contender to champion, trying
Yeah,
to
and
make
also
that leap.
because you're Puerto Rican, but yes.
But also, yeah. But no, Xander's really good, and we've been pro Xander Zayas on this show. I think a fight with him and Vergil Ortiz would be great, but it's not happening. So basically, he says that he jumped at the opportunity to fight Vergil Ortiz in that February 22nd card or whatever the case may be. He also posted about this, like, I accepted the fight but never heard back. Did you just boots me to Vergil Ortiz?
And he said he accepted it in like a minute. They asked him and he
Yeah,
said yes. Like
yeah.
he was down 100% down to take that fight.
He said they were all in. Vergil Ortiz basically was like, you know, I have bigger fish to fry, whatever, which you just kind of outline. Like, if he beats Madrimov, then maybe we're talking about him facing Terrence Crawford. Clearly, it seems like that's
the path.
That's the fight to chase at 154 right now. A quote unquote aging Terrence Crawford, who probably would still whip anybody's ass, but you never know. Like, have you seen LeBron James play lately?
Yes, that's a whole different other conversation. But I will say this one thing: if Vergil gets it done against Madrimov, and then obviously the path is to fight Bud, that's a massive blockbuster fight, Brian. Even when it comes in terms of the storylines, because remember, Bud was the king at 147 pound alongside Errol Spence Jr. What was the narrative? That the young king Vergil Ortiz was coming up and he was going to take over that division. They move up to 154 pounds. There's also, listen, you know how it is in boxing. A lot of it has to do with Mexican Americans, like there's rivalries. Could you imagine all the smack talking between the fans, the Mexican American fans? Against Bud's fans, like it would get nasty. I'm telling you right now, the storyline would be crazy for that fight.
Do we think Vergil Ortiz should have taken the Xander Zayas fight?
I here's the thing. I don't think that fight is dead either.
I don't either. I want to see that fight more than the Madrimov fight, but if I'm Vergil Ortiz, why am I fighting a prospect? He's a contender now, but you get what I'm saying. Like, why am I fighting an up and comer?
Well, here's the thing. If I'm Vergil Ortiz and I have a chance to fight Madrimov, who just fought Bud, or fight Xander Zayas, who could potentially like give him problems in the ring and beat him in that fight.
Correct.
I think I would lean towards Xander winning by decision, but my heart would be with Vergil to win that fight. Like, I'm just going to keep it real. Like, the style of fighting, you guys know, if you watch the show, I love Mexican boxers. So I would want Vergil to win, but I think Zayas would win on points on the scorecards. Now, here's the thing. If I'm Vergil, why would I take that risk? Instead, I'm going to follow this path to fight Bud and get a big-ass payday.
Right.
and fight in the biggest fight of my career. Like, that's not a small fight. That would be one of the biggest fights of the year if Bud and Vergil Ortiz was to happen. That's massive, Bryan.
Mm-hmm. And
So it's
I didn't expect Xander was going to get that fight. He also Vergil Ortiz Sr., Virgil's pops, tweeted at Xander, Xander, you seem like a good act. You seem like a good don't act. What? That's written improperly, so that's why it threw me off. But whatever. You seem like a good guy. I will put in the word for him. I think that's what he's going for. Don't act like some of these people on here. The truth is, they called and asked if Junior, Vergil Ortiz Jr., would fight you. It was an easy yes. They called 4 other guys. You were the least accomplished, so by their standards, you were not qualified as top rank. Good luck, champ. Xander Zayas replies, I respect the business decision. It's understandable, and I'm sure the fight will take place in the future. Good luck in February. Like, clap it up for both sides there, honestly. Like, I like that. I enjoy that. Like, Al Pao says Xander never fought nobody. And I mean, comparatively, I mean, he hasn't. But again, he's more of an up-and-comer. I think he's going to get that chance.
eventually, yes, for sure.
But I wouldn't say he should get it like right now. I think he's ready for it, but I think that's skipping a step to go straight to Vergil Ortiz right now. You know?
Yeah. And I also think that there's other fights on the table potentially for Xander Zayas and also for Vergil Ortiz. So, like, if he doesn't even get the Boots fight, because they're also, guys, there's rumors that are heavily coming on about Bud and Canelo. Like, I don't know if you've seen it,
Okay, yeah,
but there's like it's not been officially announced, but it's like reports that this is actually in the talks and that they're trying to make it happen. Now, I don't know how true that is because in boxing we hear that all the time, but like, I feel like that would be a historic fight for Bud, and he could just retire if he did that. So, say if Vergil Ortiz fights Madrimov, and then after he doesn't get Bud, like, there's other names at 154 pounds that he could fight.
Boots versus Xander Zayas.
Yes,
I don't think that's gonna happen. But goddamn, you wanna put some shit in Madison Square Garden? I mean, maybe
if Boots wasn't fighting Vergil, there's no way he's fighting Xander Zayas. There's no way, because I feel like Xander Zayas is much. I feel like a lot of people are hard on Xander Zayas, to be honest with you. Like, he has great performances and people aren't satisfied.
And no, Boots should not fight him next. And he shouldn't fight Boots next.
No, I know. I think Xander has the potential to beat anybody, though. Like, that's how good I think he is.
I agree.
I the only thing is that I think people are way too hard on him. It's like he's not gonna knock out everybody. Like, I hate that narrative of how they want these young prospects or up and cutting fighters to just knock out everybody. Like, not everybody has that style of fighting.
It's something that's also very specific to, like, there's this assumption that every Puerto Rican prospect has to be a knockout artist. Redacted was getting this when he was in his, when he was coming up before he went to jail for certain things. But if y'all know who I'm talking about. But Redacted, when he was coming up, he also had some performances that were underwhelming or whatever the case may be. Xander, I don't think he's had a string of underwhelming performances. I think he just has beaten a few guys or a couple guys by decision that people wanted to see knockouts, but he's not Miguel Cotto or Felix Trinidad stylistically. And he's a really good all-around fighter. Like, he's not someone who has amazing finishing ability, but he's good at everything. Like, he has defense. He has more defense than your typical Puerto Rican boxing prospect.
I also think he's a guy that could break you down round by round because you could get agitated by what he's doing in the ring, because he does have actually a pretty good IQ. Let's go to Al Pal really quick, because I feel like he had a pretty good comment here that we're going to read out. I think Xander has a better chance with Boots than Vergil.
I don't know.
I think it's a tough fight either way. I wouldn't count out Boots in that fight, but it's a tough fight for him. And I've just seen him against Kara Tukazan for the last 2 times. So it's like, I don't know where he's at, really. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things. Let's go back to our guy, Steven. Bud will get hurt bad versus Canelo. He has a mean streak and will fight, which will play into Canelo's hands. Is Jesus still on the chat? Because Steven, Jesus might be coming for you after that, because he does not like Canelo.
Try to start fights.
Listen, if I know Jesus, he has something in the clip there. But
to put a bow on the Xander Zayas thing, just real quick, because I think this is relevant to the conversation. He is ranked number 1 by the WBO. Shot at the top rank, but he is ranked number 1 by the WBO at 154. So he technically is the mandatory for Sebastian Fundora. Terence Crawford has the interim. Terence Crawford ain't fighting Xander Zayas. So Sebastian Fundora versus Xander Zayas, I feel like is possible for 2025. We'll see. And then he also is ranked number 4 by the WBC. I was telling you before when we talked about what's Xander Zayas' next move. I still think Top Rank is going to give us him versus Vito Mielnicki Jr. at some point. Like maybe you do that and then he fights Sebastian Fundora, which I think like that's a realistic path. And I think he beats Vito Mielnicki Jr., who was not very impressive in his last fight. So
yeah, and they'll probably have that fight in New York. You would think that they would. Any final thoughts, guys? Drop them in the comments. We do read all your comments. We might not always respond, but we do appreciate you guys leaving comments, rocking with the show. By the way, if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, please do. And thank you for rocking with us a little bit later tonight. We got to move on, Bryan, to a couple of fights that will be going on this weekend. Some really sneaky good ones if you're a boxing nerd. Let's start off with the one I think that we're a little bit more excited about because we've already seen the other one. And I think it's going to go similar. So we'll save that for then. But sure. Liam Paro is a minus 126 versus Richardson Hitchins, who is a minus 104. Bryan, first, your thoughts on the line, because it seems like Vegas is confused as well on this fight.
It's been 50-50 or close like the entire time. Liam Paro, he should be the favorite for this. He's beaten the better competition. He's the champion. He's fought in Puerto Rico already, and this fight is going to be in Puerto Rico. And Richardson Hitchins hasn't accomplished the same amount of anything. But man, I think this fight could legitimately, like, this is one of those where I'm probably going to bet a draw. I'm probably going to sprinkle a little bit on a draw. I tell you, whenever it's like a 50-50-ish type of fight, and with these two styles also, like, both guys are going to want to box. I think Liam Paro is more content with doing some work on the inside. He would get himself into trouble doing that against Subriel Matias. And Richardson Hitchins is not Subriel Matias at all. Very different type of fighter. So Richardson Hitchins is going to want that outside, want to, like, fight him from range and so on and so forth. So, and he has a 74-inch reach, which, I mean, he's going to put that to use against Liam Paro, who is a southpaw but has 71-inch reach. So I think this could legitimately go either way. Like, I have no idea who I think is going to win this fight. I might just sprinkle a draw and call it a day, honestly.
Okay, is that the bet that you're taking?
For now, yes. The draw is going to be, I'm not even sure if it's up, but it's going to be 4 figures. It'll be plus 1,000.
I think it's up on Bet365. I was looking. We'll just say the sportsbook. Sponsor us, sportsbooks. Okay. Yeah, I think I just saw it because I was like, I'm gonna place a bet on this.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah,
plus
it looks like a draw.
Plus 1,800 at FanDuel. I'm playing that shit.
Okay, better odds at FanDuel. Better odds there because at Bet365 it's a plus 1,400. So I also think this is actually a 50-50 fight. So I don't think Vegas is confused on that line. I think this fight could go either way. Richardson Hitchins, he's a great counterpuncher. And I feel like if he's able to control the distance in this fight, he's going to make things difficult for Liam Paro. But Liam Paro has power. He has speed. He has skill. And if he's able to get in on the inside, then he could cause problems for Richardson Hitchins. Styles make fights. And that's the thing. How will this fight go? So I think if Liam Paro can get on the inside, and I think he will be able to, I think Liam Paro wins on the cards, and it's very, very close. I think it's going to be like 115, 113. And if it went the other way to Richardson Hitchins, like, I would not be surprised. But styles make fights, and this is going to be a great fight. It could go either way. But I am going to take Liam Paro to win this one by decision. And on one prominent book, it's a plus 150. So that's where I'll be placing my money. I think Liam Paro, giving him the edge in this one, but it's a tricky fight. I think Richardson Hitchins, like I said, if he's able to control the distance, he's going to be counterpunching you. He's accurate. This is a tough fight, Bryan, but a very, very good fight.
I just bet plus 1,800 draw. Very, very small play. But still, I think that's within reach. I probably would say Liam Paro by decision. Like, if he has a championship advantage, that might be smart. But Richardson Hitchins, I mean, people will look at his last performance and be like, hey, like he's not really that good or whatever the case may be. Because a lot of people thought that Gustavo Lemos was robbed in that fight against Richardson Hitchins, where Richardson Hitchins wins a surprising unanimous decision. But he destroyed Jose Zepeda. Didn't knock him out, but destroyed him. Looked very impressive in that fight. And before that, like he's beaten a string of these sort of fringe contenders, if you will. Malik Hawkins was a notable one when he was like more of a prospect. This was a few years ago. So like he doesn't have like a crazy good resume, but he's a counterpuncher. He's slick. He's going to defend. Like he's not going to. It's not going to be a heavy volume type of fight for him, most likely. Liam Paro, I think, actually might try to push that and get that out of him. Liam Paro has done a great job against some of these type of fighters already, like Montana Love, for example. Montana Love wanted to counterpunch. Liam Paro like really forced the issue, knocked him down a couple of times, knocked him out eventually. And I think with Liam Paro too, like the fact that he's a southpaw, I wonder how a southpaw who's like really, really good. I wonder how Richardson Hitchins is going to navigate that, because this is his first like actual, other than Jose Zepeda, I would say this is his first like real test, and it's definitely his best test.
Yeah, and a lot of people thought he lost his last fight. So I think he has a lot to prove, and this is a tough test against Liam Paro, who went into Puerto Rico and beat Subriel Matias. And it's hard not to rock with him after that fight. This fight also in Puerto Rico. I got to take Liam Paro by decision. Let us know how you guys are going to be betting this fight. It's a very close one. Bryan, I think we can move on, though, to the next fight. And we've already seen this fight. It's featuring one of my favorite fighters who lost, actually, in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
But Emmanuel Navarrete is a minus 250 against Oscar Valdez, plus 200. Honestly, I thought it would be wider. I thought Oscar Valdez would be like a plus 500 or something like that along those lines. But Bryan, do you see this fight going any differently than it did the first time?
No. Like I can't. Where's the evidence that that's going to happen? Like maybe like Karen Chukadazan, we just talked about him winning more rounds against Boots Ennis, but like I'm not interested in this. This is another one. Like this is a stupid rematch. Like the first and Oscar Valdez, like he's awesome, right? Like Oscar Valdez is a great fucking fighter. But the first,
one of my favorite fighters, Oscar Valdez.
I really like Oscar Valdez as well. But the first fight was so one-sided enough to where like, and Oscar Valdez was getting hit with like these big shots by Emmanuel Navarrete. And granted, Navarrete, like he is the king of inconsistency, man. Like he's one of these dudes like Teofimo Lopez. You just don't know what the fuck you're gonna get when he steps into the ring, because that's the performance really. Like before that, so he fights Liam Wilson. We were talking about this like early on. Like this is one of the first.
Yo, didn't Liam Wilson drop him?
And Liam Wilson dropped him in round
4.
Yeah,
okay, I remember that. I remember the madness. I remember being like, yo, and we knew that was going to happen to him at one point because he just gets hit so much. That was surprising to me. I remember how shocked I was watching that.
I remember being pissed, like because I had Navarrete to get the stoppage between round 7 through 12, which he did in round 9. But I was like, bro, like, what? What are we doing here? And so he has the Liam Wilson fight. After that, against Oscar Valdez, I think you and I both were like, yo, Oscar Valdez could actually like take this fight. But
I took Oscar Valdez to win the fight. And I know a lot of it. It was a lot of people.
It was
close. I mean, like let's also going into it.
Let's
also remember though that Oscar Valdez had one of the greatest knockouts like a year prior.
Yeah.
Right? And it was like crazy. But then it's like, what Oscar Valdez are we going to get in this fight? Because we saw how upset he was after this loss against Emmanuel Navarrete, because Emmanuel Navarrete, like, I guess to say it, I guess he got destroyed. Like he destroyed Oscar Valdez.
He did.
Right?
And like, here's the thing. Like he beats Liam Wilson, he beats Oscar Valdez, and the Oscar Valdez was like, oh shit, he put it all together. He looks like he could be pound for pound in the future, whatever. Robson Conceição next fight, and it's like, hey, come on, he'll beat, and he has a draw with Conceição. It was a fight he really could have lost, even though he knocked him down twice. He looked like shit. He looked sloppy, doing the same shit over and over. Like it was just bad, man. At times he looked like Deontay Wilder did against Joseph Parker, just telegraphing everything. And Conceição was able to just hold and does all the dirty boxing shit that he does to the inside. You know what I mean? And then
classic.
And then he loses to Baranchyk, which going into that fight, I was like, man, I don't really want to bet on Navarrete like that. But I mean, how like he has all this talent,
but
whatever.
At the time, he was moving up in that Baranchyk fight, remember? And it seems like his power didn't transcend. So now he's fighting an Oscar Valdez. And to be honest with you, like I think Emmanuel Navarrete could win by stoppage in this fight if it's anything like the last fight. But I'm watching this fight, Brian, to see what type of Oscar Valdez we get in this fight. Like, not to say that he's going to win this fight, but he's probably going to win a few more rounds. But if he has another performance like how he did in the first fight, would it be time to kind of hang up the gloves at that point?
33. He just beat Liam Wilson, by the way, too, and he looked good in that fight. But that's the only win he's had the only fight he's had since the Navarrete fight. So not like a ton of activity, but the Navarrete fight was also a little over a year ago. For this one, like in terms of a pick, I mean, Navarrete on points feels safe at plus 110. But after talking it out a little bit because of Navarrete's inconsistency, like they're like Oscar Valdez could be approaching this. There's something to be said about this as his last big opportunity because it kind of is. And Jesus says in the comments, Valdez will retire Saturday. If he loses, he might. He's 33. He's been in a lot of fights. This is his 35th.
I don't think I'm ready to see this fight. Like, now I'm getting nervous. Thank you, Jesus. Like, I'm upset now because that could be the last time we see him in the ring. Like, and the funny thing is that was kind of the narrative in the last Navarrete fight. Remember, they were like, this is Oscar Valdez's like last chance. And he gets it again. But it's like, if it's going to be anything similar to the first fight and Jesus says like, yo, he's probably going to retire Saturday if he loses. And I think that's a possibility. Like, I don't even know if I want to see this fight. Like, I'm scared now.
Alva Powell feeling a knockout coming, but not sure who. Okay, let's talk about some other bets on this fight. Would you take Shantelle and chat if you want to comment as well, as always, over half a knockdown minus 110 to get at least one knockdown
for this fight?
Yes.
I'm taking the over.
Okay, so last time,
because I feel like
we didn't get
if Oscar Valdez, even if Oscar Valdez has any success, because Emmanuel Navarrete gets hit so much, he can also get dropped. But yeah, I'm taking the over on that.
Navarrete's been dropped. Valdez has been dropped. Also, like, I feel like Valdez in particular is gonna really fucking go for it, which could lead into like him walking into something. Navarrete is very unorthodox. He has super long arms for somebody who's 5'7". He has a 6 foot reach, basically. You know what I mean? Like,
you never know what you're gonna get from him. Essentially, like that's what I feel.
The over is 10.5. That's minus 260 only, so that's like a parlay leg more than anything else. But the over is 10.5 rounds. I'm staying away from that.
I kind of like the under. Like,
oh boy,
there's a possibility it does.
Plus 196.
Oof. I kind of, if it's anything like the last fight, I think Navarrete could get it done earlier, between 5 through 8. Because the amount of punishment that Oscar Valdez took in that fight, it was not easy to watch in that first fight. If it's anything like that. What?
By the way, no, I was gonna say, by the way, his fight with Liam Wilson wasn't easy either. Like, he looked good in that fight, but Liam Wilson was also taking rounds off of Oscar Valdez.
Yeah.
Like, and he just happened to get the stoppage. Would you bet Navarrete to win between rounds 5 through 8? By the way, you just mentioned it is plus 700.
I might sprinkle.
Okay.
I don't think my heart can do it. Like, I think I'm nervous now for this fight for Oscar Valdez. Like, I think I'm going to be in tears on Saturday night if it doesn't go the way that I want it to go. And yeah, I think this is going to be, I didn't even realize, by the way, guys, we're doing a post-fight show. So if you want to join me in crying, ta-da. Yay, we will be here. So join us on Saturday because we will be doing a post-fight show. We're going to be talking about Liam Paro, Richardson Hitchins, also the top-ranked card, which, by the way, it's a pretty good card.
We should talk about that before
Rafael Espinoza is going to be fighting in this card, who's probably one of my favorite fighters right now in a rematch.
Do we think that fight goes any differently? Robeisy Ramirez, Rafael Espinoza, we saw this already. Espinoza won. It was a surprising upset for a lot of people. I wasn't terribly surprised, to be honest with
Is
you.
Robeisy Ramirez overrated? I think that's the conversation.
He's the
Because so much
favorite?
hype. He
So
shouldn't be.
Robeisy Ramirez is minus 128.
Yo, I'm about to place a bet right now.
And Rafael Espinoza is plus 106.
Is that a
What?
mistake? Hold
No,
on.
I think people are just betting on Robeisy Ramirez. Why?
Because I think he's overrated. Is he not? Is Robeisy Ramirez not overrated?
What the fuck is this line? Robeisy Ramirez, he won against Brandon Benitez in June, and Rafael Espinoza, who he destroyed Sergio Sanchez. Sergio Sanchez, not like, not a top flight, whatever, but destroyed him. Like, he put him down in rounds 1, 3, 4, knocked him out in the fourth, I believe. So Rafael Espinoza won a majority decision the first time they fought. I just wanted to put that out there.
The odds are like Rafael Espinoza to win by decision is a plus 275. By knockout TKO is a plus 300, and Ramirez gets hit a lot.
I'm seeing plus 340 by stoppage for Ramirez. I'm seeing plus 150 by decision for Ramirez and plus 340 for Espinoza by stoppage.
So this is my PSA for anyone watching right now. If you can bet where you are, put your money on Rafael Espinoza right now. Okay, if there's any bet that I've ever said, like Charles Barkley says, I guarantee Rafael Espinoza is gonna win on Saturday.
They knocked each other down in that first fight too. That was a really good. That was as good as fight. that was better than Navarrete Valdez too. To me, this is the more interesting of the two fights, but it's not the main event. So, I'm betting Espinoza right now.
He's my favorite. Now. He's
money
my
line
favorite
though,
fighter.
Not decision, not stoppage, just money line.
I'm just going on it. I'm just gonna place a bunch of bets on him.
Look, if I lose this, then fine. But I think this is a bad line. Like,
it is.
The underdog is the guy who won, and I thought fairly convincingly. It wasn't a wide margin, convincingly. But like I thought it was like an easy decision.
If I'm being honest with you, Rafael Espinoza at 126 pounds is probably the scariest fighter in that division. Until Inoue moves up in that division, it's Rafael Espinoza. Like, tell me I'm wrong.
To be fair, I mean, he's 6'1". I don't know how Inoue handles that.
Dude, he'll figure it out. The speed, the accuracy, like Espinoza is a monster. Yeah. If you're watching the show and you can bet, go put your money. You'll thank me later. Christmas is coming up. You gotta buy gifts. There's bills. All right, you gotta pay the
don't
card.
Put too much
I don't
money.
know.
Bet responsibly. All right.
Like, bet responsibly. But if you got some money to bet,
within your means.
Money. Thank you, Brian, for helping me out. I'm just saying, put your money on Rafael Espinoza. He is the one. He's the one at 126 pounds. If you're not, and he's so fun to watch. Like, I think he's like one of the most exciting boxers out right now. Please bet responsibly. And bet responsibly. Brian, any final thoughts before we get up and out of here?
Yes, you mentioned the top ranked card, and also let me pull up the Liam Paro Richardson card. I just want to shout out a couple of the other fighters and fights that we're going to see. Lindolfo Delgado versus Jackson Mariñez. Jackson Mariñez was in the ring with Rolly Romero at one point, so he's accomplished. But Lindolfo Delgado, we've talked about him in terms of like what's he going to be at 140 recently, because 140 is a mess. This is an impact fight for him. If he can get an impressive victory, we'll see how that goes. Oh God, nerd, what a comment. Espinoza versus Ball. We already saw Nick Ball against Ray Vargas.
Nick Ball is so fun to watch.
I love Nick Ball. He's one of my favorite fucking boxers. Yo.
Oh my God,
gets it done.
I would love to see our preview show with Brian and I for Espinoza and Nick Ball. I can only imagine how that would go.
You know what? Top 10 fights I want most in boxing in 2025. That's going to be in my top 10.
And by the way, guys, we have some really cool stuff coming up for you guys in December. We're going to do some fun stuff. We're going to do an award show this year. Couldn't do it
Yes.
last year because I got like deadly sick and
Really
got
sick.
laryngitis.
Yes.
I got there. It was terrible, but we did.
She sounded amazing.
Yeah,
Honestly, you sent me a voice though. I was like, "There's no fucking way that's your voice."
it was terrible. It was that bad, and it was like after we did Inaway, after we did the Inaway fight on like Christmas Eve, which by the way, or Boxing Day, it was. It was
Yeah,
on Boxing Day, I think. But this time this year, I think it's on Christmas Eve or something like
morning.
that.
Yes,
Yeah,
Christmas Eve morning.
and we will be with you for that too during the holidays. So make sure to subscribe, hit the like button. Brian, why don't you read out the rest of the card before we get up and out of here?
You gave the PSA. I will say we have 3 post-fight shows we're planning on December. This being one of them on December 7th this weekend, where we'll recap Espinoza versus Ramirez and the Liam Paro Richardson Hitchins fights. Whichever ends last, we'll go after that one. So if one ends before the other, although it's boxing, so they might be on at the same time, which would be annoying because we'll have to be watching both at the same time. We're also planning on obviously a live show for Usyk Fury 2. That's going to be December 21st. And then 3 days later, now you're in a way because he loves fighting on American holidays, Christmas Eve morning. We're going to do that. And we'll do the award show at some point. We might have to do it after those 2 fights,
Yeah, for
obviously.
sure.
So it'll be between Christmas and New Year's before we both, because I think we're both probably leaving the country
Yeah.
that week. So, I mean, you're leaving your country. I'm leaving
Yes. I leave all the time, but nah.
Yeah.
I will say though, we should probably do the award show live. Is what I'm thinking. If you guys want us to do
Yes.
that live, let us
Yes.
know because I think
Yes.
it would be more fun. And Brian might wear a tuxedo. We don't know yet.
I gotta find
That
something.
would be hilarious if you
I
wear a
should.
tuxedo.
I should. I got a suit somewhere, but I don't know if we'll see. We'll see.
We'll
All
have
right.
some fun with it.
All right. So we have Giovanni Santillán. He's fighting Frederick Lawson. Richard Torres Jr. I want him back on the show. Richard Torres Jr. fighting Isaac Gutierrez at heavyweight, and this is like another like sort of just gradual progression in Richard Torres Jr., who's now 11-0. I remember when he was debuting. He's already 11-0. It's crazy. Isaac Munoz Gutierrez, who is 18-1-1 with 15 knockouts. His only loss is to Jermaine Franklin. That was in Detroit. That was a decision loss. Doesn't have like a win that anybody here would care about, but been in the ring with Jermaine Franklin. So it seems like a logical test to see how Richard Torres Jr. handles it. And if he gets a stoppage. Then you have like Albert Gonzalez and you have Demler Zamora's on this card. So that's cool. And then moving on to the card in Puerto Rico, December 7th. So mentioned Liam Paro, Richardson Hitchins. You also have Henry LeBron versus Christopher Diaz. This is the nerd fight of the weekend for me. Christopher Diaz was supposed to be like the next great Puerto Rican featherweight, at least. Had multiple opportunities and just didn't get it done. And Henry LeBron like could be a factor at 130.
He's one of my.
Yes.
It's kind of crazy, but he's one of my favorite fighters right now, and everyone thinks I'm a nerd for that. But I like the way he boxes.
Yeah, he kind of like Xander Zayas, where he's just super technical. Xander Zayas has more power, but he's just super technical. Doesn't have like a huge weakness other than maybe
he's a problem for anyone that he fights, man.
Right.
Henry LeBron is a problem for anyone that he fights. If you haven't seen him fight yet, definitely go watch him. He's fun to watch.
The other one I want to shout out is Yanquiel Rivera Figueroa, who's going to fight Angel Gonzalez. And 2 undefeated fighters. Yanquiel Rivera is really, really fun. He's 6-0 only with 2 knockouts, but they're pushing him like very quickly. He's already like he's going to be fighting for a title soon if he wins this fight. Angel Gonzalez is 14-0 with 7 knockouts, and Angel Gonzalez is 5'3", and he's probably going to have a good amount of volume in this fight. So that should, excuse me, that should be fun. Yanquiel Rivera, I think, will win that one. But I mean, shit, he's going to get a lot of support from the crowd as well too. So there's some pretty good fights this weekend and some prospects worth monitoring.
All right, guys, remember we're doing a post-fight show this Saturday, so definitely come join us. And if you want to leave any comments on anything that we talked about, please do make sure to hit that like and subscribe button because it helps the channel grow. And Brian, I'll let you have the final words before we get up and out of here.
See you Saturday. And no, I'm not. I don't know if I'm going to have a tuxedo shirt, but TBD. But let us know if you want to see tuxedos on the award show.
Good night, guys.